Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast that melts in your mouth, not in your hand. I'm Chris Daly, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Mr. Jon Westhoff. John, what's going on, man?
What's up, Chris? Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely, man. You actually are the first three-time person. How do you feel?
3 times.
Three-time guest, the very first one. I
I
think
feel bad for you that you're scraping the bottom of the barrel in comics, but I'll take it.
I I I am glad to have anyone that wants to come on my show. Sometimes I worry that I'm not going to have anybody, and then all of a sudden my inbox blows up with a bunch of different people. So I'm very pleased. I'm very honored. I'm very happy that people want to come back to the show. And I talked to Matt and Steph. They're a little bit upset they weren't the first three-time because they were the first two-time. But I said
Got him.
maybe next time.
I'm gonna have to hold that over him.
There you go. All right, man. So for the icebreaker question today, I want to ask you if you could meet any artist or performer or band even, because I want to talk music with you a little bit more because we don't really get to do that very much. Um, so if you could meet one musical act, who would it be?
Oh boy. That's a tough one. I'm definitely in the camp of never meet your heroes.
Oh, for sure.
Um, I've had a couple, not nothing, too bad. Like some people will tell some horror stories, but
Yeah.
I'd rather just kind of keep the fantasy alive in my mind. But I mean, probably David Byrne, in the Talking Heads era would probably be the one I would want to meet
Ooh, nice.
the most. He comes to mind as somebody who I just like to hear, talk about life and music and how he does all that creative stuff.
That would be cool. I think for me, it would have to be Howard Jones, Killswitch Engage era
Mm, mm.
because man, I love Killswitch Engage so much and nothing against Jesse at all. Um, Howard is just his voice is just so magical, dude.
You cannot deny that. I'm definitely Camp Jesse. I have to admit, I kind of caught them in the when they first came out, and I was
Yeah.
a little upset when he left, and he had to, but I
Yeah.
love Howard, and it just felt, even though it's totally the same for me, it was like two different bands. Like they went off, and I kind of figured to treat them differently. I like them both, but I was
Yeah.
always Jesse. But yeah, Howard seems like a really cool guy.
Yeah, I really like Jesse a lot too. I just happened to when I got introduced to Killswitch, it was through pro wrestling actually.
Hmm.
When CM Punk was using This Fire Burns as his entrance music.
Okay,
I heard that song and I was hooked, man. And Howard is his singing and his voice is just so magical that I would love. I mean, granted, I would love to meet any version of Killswitch, honestly, but I would really want to meet Howard. He's my bucket list person for sure. Very
nice.
cool. All right, man. So summertime's coming up. Actually, it's here now, I guess. Most of the kids are out of school by now. What do you got planned for this summer?
Well, yeah. Speaking of kids being out, both of my kids are scouts, so we'll be doing summer camp activities soon.
Nice.
Staying out in the woods for a week or so, and they're in separate troops, so I got to go support them on 2 separate weeks. So my summer's taken up with a lot of that kind of stuff.
Nice.
We've talked about going to do a fossil dig. They let you come out on a fossil site and kind of pretend like you're a paleontologist for the weekend. We've
Nice.
considered that as well, and of course, lots of comics to ship and make and all that stuff.
Very cool. I remember my days as a scout fondly. Boy Scout camp was always kind of the highlight of the summer.
Mm.
My very first one was a little rough because it was my first time like being away from home and being camping and we had gone to do an activity and left our tents unzipped and it rained super hard, so everything just got
Oh, the
soaked.
number one rule.
Yeah, man. And so it was like again, it was my very first time camping and I got super bummed and I got super homesick, but
Yeah,
I kind of got that out of my system and then the rest of the time was fun. And then every other year,
yeah,
until I became an Eagle Scout, it was a
nice.
lot of fun.
My son was the same way. He was a Cub Scout during COVID days,
Yeah.
so he missed a lot of the camping and a lot of that stuff. So his first real camp out without us was summer camp his first year, and yeah, he
Yeah.
got super homesick like the second or third day. So I went down and stayed. It was just not too far away, so I went down there and stayed, and he's been fine ever since. But yeah, a lot of the younger scouts that happens. They always joke with the moms, don't pick up the phone on the first call and let them
Yeah.
tough it out.
Yeah, it's definitely rough, especially, being far from home. The camp I went to, I think, was a couple hours away from home, and yeah, It was kind of rough, but it was fun. It was a good experience for sure.
My daughter's younger than him, and she's all about it. She's like, "Don't come
Nice.
down. I don't care. I'll be." This is her first. She's done camps with me as a Cub
Yeah.
Scout, but she's like deuces. So she's the opposite. We'll see though. She actually makes it. I'll let you know if she's calling me on Wednesday to pick her up.
That's awesome. That's really cool that she's super into it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. So we're here today to talk about Final Heist. So what I want to do before we get started in that is I want to know, what happened, what led to you and Aaron hooking up to making this story.
Well, as a third time guest on your show, you've probably heard me say this before, but all good ideas either come from a really inside joke or just some sort of something like that you just can't let go.
Yeah.
So Aaron has a book. He did a crime heist book called One Last Job. And I made a comment to him that I'm going to do one that's called like The Last Final Forever Job. I'm going to go above you there. And he's like, very
Yeah.
funny. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. And then I just the seed of the idea of the term final heist. I said, oh, I'm going to call mine Final Heist. And then I was like, well, why is it that name? And then there's kind of, a twist into the genre mashing that we're doing with this one. And I just couldn't let it go. Sat on it for a couple of years. And then I had a shell of an outline. I started scripting it, and I approached Aaron actually to edit it. And I said, oh, I was kind of joking with you about that, but I think I actually have something here. Do you want to edit it? And he kind of looks it over and he's like, well, here's some ideas that he had. And I was like, well, it sounds like you actually want to co-write it. And he's like, what, whatever you'll have me for. So yeah, so originally I was just like, hey, I'm having trouble kind of smoothing out this idea. And would you come in as an editor? And then, the more we talked about it, he was super into the idea. And he took the inside joke on the chin and said, yeah, let's do a horror heist book. So that was how he came on board.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we've talked about it, like you said, we've talked about it before where you just get that little weird nugget of an idea and you just can't let it go. Like, I don't know if I talked about it, with you before. I've talked about it before where I had the idea for Double O Dino, where I was reading one of Felicia Day's books and
Uh-huh.
she had mentioned Double O Dino. I'm like, that's such a stupid idea. Then I was like, wait a minute,
Wait a
like a
minute.
dinosaur as James Bond. That's so cool. I,
Sounds
I
badass.
I keep talking about it and I haven't done anything with it, and I probably should because it's kind of a crime not to do anything with that cool idea. Or like my daughter was singing a song and she was singing it very incorrectly. So she was singing it instead of hypno dancer, she was singing it hippo dancer. So
Oh,
then I
there you
was
go.
kind of like, okay, because I already have this character that I've really another one I've done nothing with, um, called Wild Bill Hippo, who travels through time by just unzipping holes in the fabric of space-time, and he just travels through space and time. And I thought that'd be kind of a cool idea. Maybe he's looking for a family member and he's looking for his sister, the hippo dancer. And I was like, man. So, like, and I've talked to Chad Perkins about this too. And I know how you feel about Chad Perkins. Um, it's those weird little ideas that you kind of just get onto, and then a lot of people just kind of just let them go and tell them to go away. But those really weird little ideas, they can usually turn out into something really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this last time with Bulletproof Chicken started that way, and
Yeah,
CPS started that way. Um, yeah, the only difference, for myself, people say, "Oh, John, you have so many books, and how do you?" It's just I'm just a person who can't let it go. I'm like, I cannot let a bad joke go. I
yeah,
gotta, I gotta keep it going. I gotta get it out of my head. I remember one time seeing at Chicago Comics someone's independent comic called Dinosaur Sheriff, very similar to what you're describing. And again, those kind of very simple. I saw the words Dinosaur Sheriff, and I said, I'm buying this book. I'm already in. Like,
yeah,
I love those kind of ideas where it sells itself before you even have to say anything.
absolutely.
So I try to, that's all I have over other creators is that I'm stubborn and I won't let it go.
Yeah, I had a friend who was trying to see if he could make investigator a thing, like a private eye alligator. And I'm like, I think it kind of already exists as a thing, but I mean, doesn't mean that
Darn,
you still
someone
can't.
someone got you on that one.
Doesn't mean you still can't do your own version of it though.
Right. And the funny thing about that is I sat on Final Heist for forever and it actually got delayed last year. And then of course in that time an independent movie came out in another country called Final Heist. And I was like, damn it, see, we were too slow. Now everyone's gonna think we ripped him off, but it was us first.
That sucks, man.
Yep.
So, for those that don't know about Final Heist, why don't we talk a little bit about what the book is about?
Well, it is not the Asian market movie that you may have seen when Googling it on the internet. So we are not associated. No disrespect to them. It looked
Sure.
like a cool premise they had, but similarly, like other heist books, it's often revolves around a group or a person that used to be in the game, so to speak, and they were out. And of course, just when they're out, you drag them back in. So that's kind of how we started the story. But we're doing some genre mashing. If people will notice, if maybe you're perusing the Kickstarter right now, as Chris and I talk, um, there's three very striking covers. So Aaron and I talked about that idea that this was a little bit of genre mashing. There's some romance, there's a horror twist, there's action. It's very much we're trying to put in all that we loved in 80s and 90s movies and kind of just make an over the top, one shot, complete story with these characters. It's 32 pages long. And with each cover, in regards to the genre that it's in, we're adding some back material because we felt like a lot of times people buy the variant and covers are cool and people collect those, but we wanted to add some bonus content in the end, dealing with each. So we thought that was a little bit different. Because we're very much taking the tropes of these three genres and kind of twisting them a little bit to make our own story in this universe that we've created.
That's awesome. Now, if you were to kind of list off a few of your like real life references that you kind of pulled from or were inspired by, or even something that is similar, what are some of the different things that you could list off about that?
Well, a big inspiration for this, one of my favorite movies, and the one that really got me into kind of off the wall stuff was Army of Darkness.
Okay.
My father let me watch Evil Dead 2 at probably too young of an age, and that one kind of freaked me out a little bit, but
Yeah,
just
dude.
that Sam Raimi style
Yeah.
always stuck with me. I always much more lean towards movies like that, and Freddy's Dead and stuff that kind of leaned into the humor and the campiness a little bit.
Yeah.
And then when Army of Darkness came out when I was like 13, I was like, this is the coolest movie ever. And it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's
Oh, not at
maybe a
all.
little scary or a little thrilling at times. But I
Mhm.
know for a lot of people that was the point, that it went too far for them. But for me, I've always enjoyed stuff like that, and that was like my first favorite movie that I tried to hunt down and couldn't find it at the stores. So you had to have your little video store in the neighborhood kind of order it, from wherever. And I just thought that was really cool that it was kind of this off the mainstream uh, movie. So that was a big one for me. In fact, part of the ending of this is very much in homage to Army of Darkness,
Nice.
and that's the one. And I love all the other over the top ones, RoboCop and Terminator and Predator and all those great
Yeah.
movies of that era. But this one's not. Again, if you're familiar with my writing, I can't help but kind of lean into the comedy side. So I definitely hope that it's thrilling and it's action packed, but it also doesn't take itself too seriously. The characters are very much a riff on a lot of the movies that I've described.
Very cool. Yeah, I know. I think I just barely watched, those original Sam Raimi Evil Dead movies within like the last 4 or 5 years for like the first time ever. Because one time I got a wild hair that I was going to try to switch things up and write something kind of spooky. And I think that even I wasn't old enough to watch those because those were pretty intense.
Yeah, yeah. It
That's
takes it the first one, and then the second one is just a masterpiece. And then, yeah, again, he kind of went a different direction with the third, but I kind of like
yeah.
how unique they all are.
Yeah, for sure. And even though Army of Darkness is still kind of scary in its own way, it kind of leaned a lot more into the humor, I thought, really.
For sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. Um, so why don't we take a little bit of time to talk about the Kickstarter? It's going now. It's going to end next week, or I guess when we post this, it'll be ending today on June 11th, even though today is June 3rd. Um, but why don't we talk a little bit about, what you guys have to offer on the Kickstarter, kind of what some of the different things you've unlocked and some of the different things available.
Yeah, thanks. First and foremost, if anybody's listening to this on the 12th, 13th, a couple days after, we are definitely taking advantage of Kickstarter offers late pledges now. So don't feel like, as long as it gets to minimum funding by the 11th, and we're confident that it will, there is a window to still continue to order the book. There's very limited exclusive items like hollow foil covers and metal covers that you can probably still get at this point. So we definitely want to educate people on that. I think that's a newer thing for Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Um, Again, you still have to reach that minimum goal, which I totally get, to make sure that you secure your minimum funding to get the book out there. But it's nice that they offer, because there's always a few people every Kickstarter now that oops, I forgot to click it, or oh, I saw your link 3 days later. So it's a cool way to continue to pre-order up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm working with Aaron and his company Catalyst Comics. I am the co-owner, or the sole owner of Part Time Comics. And again, it's really my first time with a credited co-writer on a book. I've done some little things before, but part of this book was stretching myself a little bit and saying, you know what, let's bring somebody else in. Let's get some other ideas going. You've had this shell of an idea. Let's see what Aaron can, spin on it, and make it work. And that's been a fun thing for me too. That again, even 15 years into my writing career, I've never really sat down and said, let's co-write something together. So Aaron was really a key part of this. He does the awesome logos for each genre. So Aaron is a graphic designer by day. So I didn't even think about it at the time, but bringing him in, elevated our design game on this. So it really is the total package. I'm doing the lettering on it. And then we've got interior artist Deborah Lanchinisi. The story takes place. Again, Randall, an ex-con, is brought in by some of his nefarious friends that got him out of the business, years before. But they've of course got to get together for this last score. And the story takes place at the oldest bank known in the world right now. It's debated what it is, but as of right now, there is a bank in Italy that is known as the oldest bank in the world that's left standing. So when I kind of came across that tidbit on the internet, I was like, oh, what better place to have kind of this story take place. So when we were searching for an artist, a friend named Patrick Coyle, I was saying, hey, I'm looking for an artist on a book. We're having trouble kind of teaming up with somebody, and he said, hey, reach out to Deborah Lanchinisi. She's from Italy, but she's great to work with. And I said, oh, she's from Italy. Well, this is serendipitous because we have a story that takes place in Italy. Let's get us an Italian artist who knows the scenery and knows
Yeah.
what's going on over there. So it ended up working out. And she's like, her schedule didn't quite line up last year, so we ended up delaying the book a little bit. But that wasn't, for any reason other than we wanted to give her the full time to complete it and not have her feel rushed. Again, it is a full 32-page book, so that takes some time and
Yeah.
dedication. We also understood, what, she's also a working artist. She's got to take the gigs as they come. So, work it in as you're able to. And she was able to do that. So Deborah was the last piece to the puzzle. We've got two awesome, again, genre covers, a horror cover by Dan Schmidt and an action cover by artist DNS out of England. So, these are all, with the exception of DNS, we haven't worked with any. I've co-wrote with Aaron. I haven't worked with Dan or Deborah. So it's all new people to me. And that's always the funnest part of making comics is meeting the co-creators. At the end of the day, you have this thing that you've created together that only the group of you could make. And that I think we've got a really cool, again, it's a one-shot comic. You get the whole story here. Aaron and I have talked about maybe doing like a creature feature theater type of thing with it, maybe doing different one-shots. But, we're interested to see how this first one is received and kind of go from there.
Very cool. So would you do one shots with different characters, but in the same universe, or would you do future one shots with the same characters just telling a different story?
I definitely think this story leaves some opening for some of the characters in it. I won't spoil it. We could definitely go back to that world, what happens to them afterwards, what happened to them before then and how they got here, or something else in kind of this weird surrealistic world that we kind of set up that could occur, at the same time, like Stephen King does with his universe, where it's kind of he's always hints that things are occurring, within the same universe. I think that would be really fun to do.
I think that's cool too, especially when you've got like the big joint universe with, all the different things happening because, you've got all these stories and you a lot of times will only hear one story from that universe, but there's got to be tons of other stories out there that are taking place in the same universe. So being able to tell all those different stories and kind of having that like joint, like shared universe is a super cool thing to do.
And there's been several times I've been on projects where I wished I had the foresight to think of that, like, oh, these could have connected together. And I think, those of us who came into comics, most of us come through the superhero universe. I
Yeah.
think that's part of at least 50% of the joy is like, oh, Daredevil could show up one day. And, I think a lot of
Yeah.
authors don't think about kind of building their own world in that regard.
Oh, for
And I
sure.
think we should probably more often.
Yeah, I think it's really cool when you are able to see some of that crossover effect. I mean, even in indie comics, it happens. It doesn't happen as much, but it does happen a little bit here and there. But yeah, with the superhero genre, a lot of people, you're right. They probably got introduced that way, and just all the dream matchups of what if so and so shows up here, blah blah blah. So it's really cool thing to do, I think.
When Mako from Savage Dragon showed up in the Max when I was a kid, oh man, I lost my mind. I was like, this is the coolest shit.
Right? Absolutely. All right, so you had mentioned that, this is the first time in, your whole career of writing that you've written with a co-writer. How was that how did you have to change your process of writing? Because, up until now, you've had the final say on everything, but now you're kind of sharing the load with somebody else. How did that go?
There's definitely a learning curve to it. I'll be honest with you. I try to speak honestly. I thought I definitely my other co-creators, my artists that I work with, anybody who comes on the book, I do feel like I share the creative vision. I don't feel like if an artist changes a panel or adds a page, I always want them to have freedom. So I
Yeah,
definitely consider them my co-writers, even though they may not see that themselves. But
sure.
to actually say, here's a script or here's some characters, and then hand it off to somebody and then see what they do, I thought I would be mature enough, and my ego would be in check where I wouldn't be recoil. But it took some learning, and I think that's good for me. I think I need to see someone else's um ideas, you know work together, because I think it's important for everybody. I did not think I would be so precious about it. I was kind of like, well, I wasn't sure at first, and I'm like, you're being stupid. Just hand it off. So really, I outlined a lot of the script, and then I said, Aaron, what do you think we're missing? And he's like, well, we need a setup scene here, we need this, and then kind of just let him work within the pages. And stopped being so precious about it, and just said, let's see what happens. He did some we he edited some of my lines, I edited some of his, and it came out as something only the two of us could do together. So it definitely initially took a lot more of checking my ego than I thought. I thought I was more of a grown up at this point.
Yeah. No, it's definitely hard, with the writing that I've done, a lot of it has been with a co-writer. I mean, we don't co-write anymore together. But it it was tough because we'd kind of brainstorm out kind of what we want to do and kind of what characters we'd want to use. Basically, we were creating kind of a universe kind of like the Astro City comic book where you've got all
Mm,
these different characters but the main character really isn't the characters, it's the city that the characters live in. So we were kind of doing something like that on our own, and we'd each write stories, and then we'd kind of like do a swap and like have edit each other's stories. And that part was hard because he didn't take criticism very well. And so if I
mm,
said, and he would write a bunch of stuff out, and it was just, I'd see the idea of what he was trying to get to, but you kind of try and take it and reshape it. And like, I think you can say the same thing you're wanting to say just with less words.
yeah,
Um, and that was something that always was kind of a hard thing but he would take it kind of hard. But then he would like think about it like, okay, well, that actually kind of was a good suggestion. So it's definitely hard because you want to make sure you're sensitive of the other person's feelings. You don't want to hurt their feelings. But at the
sure,
same time, it's hard because you got to take it's not a personal thing. You're just trying to help make each other better. So it's definitely, I totally get what you're saying about, being precious with it. I'm kind of like that when it comes to sharing my writing, where I'm afraid of what people are going to say about it, or if I'm not really as good as I think I am. And it's not that I think I'm super good at it, but I think I'm okay writer. So it's definitely hard to kind of share that with other people.
it is. And I look forward to doing it again. I will be honest, I don't know if I could do it with other characters like Drumsticks of Doom or CPS. I think
Yeah,
I've become a little too attached, and wanting to kind of have their story told as I kind of see it out. But it is something I probably need to try more of in the future. I know we have all kinds of peers in the. I know one creator, Carissa Grant. She and her co-writer write one main character, and then the other one writes the other one. And I think that would be cool, like you were describing. Let's, characters in the same world or something like that. That would be a really fun way to do it.
Yeah, it's really cool. You each kind of take your own thing and you write a story, but it all takes place in the same, world. And they kind of the way you write your stories kind of they interact with each other. It's a lot of fun to do.
Nice.
Very cool. All right, so after Final Heist is over, what's coming up next from you?
Well, the train always keeps rolling over here at Part Time Comics.
For sure.
We should probably change the name to Full Time Comics. The next Drumsticks of Doom, the final issue of the second arc, the band on the Silver Mountain, is coming right after Final Heist is done in July.
Nice.
Dan Doherty and I are ready to finish this part of the miniseries. If anybody has followed along, you know that this is a 3 arc story that we're telling. So we're going to leave you, for better or worse, on a pretty big cliffhanger here at the end of this one. But it definitely wraps up the story of Lana going off to the mysterious Silver Mountain and recording her album. That portion of her journey will end here. But who's going to make it out of that, and be ready for the tour, which, of course, the progression goes get the band together, record the album, go on tour, is going to be our 3rd arc. So we're very excited for that. And then following that, in September, the final issue of Child Possession Services with our new artist and co-creator Mata Sorcier and I are going to wrap up that series as a 4-issue series in September. So yeah, we're really Final Heist is a really important halfway point of the year. We've already had 2 successful campaigns this year, and once we get through with Final Heist, the wheel keeps turning.
That's awesome. And I don't know if I mentioned this already on Facebook, but I just got caught up with CPS. Oof, dude, so good.
Thank you.
I really liked it a lot. I'm
Yeah, I'm
I'm
very.
I'm eventually going to get caught up on all your series. I'm very slowly getting there, but I'm definitely getting there.
Oh no, let me know. We'll put you on the comp list. We appreciate your promotion.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, Bulletproof Chicken so far absolutely is still my favorite, very favorite, very favorite.
People say that all the
CPS.
time. It's hard to stop that one.
That one, are you planning more of that one?
I the co-creator of that series, Bob Garnellis, he is not really doing sequential pages, and I said if we bring it back for like a trade, maybe like a story to finish out a trade or something, I would want him to do it. So it's really going to depend on if he and I, come up with that last bit of a story idea. But for now, we're sticking a fork in the chicken.
Fair enough. Yeah, so good. I'm working my way through all your stuff. I think I might be one or two behind on drumsticks, but man, it's so good too. So people listening, Drumsticks of Doom is coming. If you haven't listened to it or haven't read it yet, make sure you get on it. I spoke about that a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to a couple of other guys. We got talking about music and comics smashing together, and you were the very first person I thought of. So I was like, you guys need to check out Drumsticks of Doom. We talked about it on the show, and I that's kind of why I tagged you in it because I was like, you guys got to go talk to John, get your hands on Drumsticks of Doom because it's so very good.
No, I appreciate that, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're in the middle of Lana's journey there. So next year, I think with CPS wrapping up, with LCS wrapping up for now, uh, Drumsticks will be the only ongoing series. So Dan and I have talked about, what? We know indie comic schedule is different than mainstream, right? We knew it would take a while, but he and I have already talked about we need to finish this series in 2026. All the fans that have hung on this long, let's, put a cap on the series. So I would plan for lots of issues of that next year as Dan and I, close out that series.
Fantastic. All right, man. So, reminder to people out there, the Kickstarter for Final Heist ends on June 11th. We'll make sure we get the link out on social media so everybody knows about it. We got to get it to the finish line, so let's get some eyes on it, share it around with all your friends, and let's get it out there. John, before we let you go, where can we find you on social media and keep track of you?
Yeah, I'm part-time comics with an X at the end instead of a CS on all social medias. I'm pretty active on all of them. So pick your favorite one that you want to follow us on. The best way to find us though is Linktree / part-time comics, again with an X. And then you can choose how you want to engage with us: mailing list, YouTube, social media. You pick the way that you want us to irritate you with all our Kickstarter links, and then follow along.
That's a good idea. I need to get myself a link tree because I got way too many things I need to talk about takes too much time. I need to just get a link tree. I just need to quit being lazy about it.
Yeah, it is very helpful because again, in this world, everybody kind of engages, and that just you can kind of lay out. Here's all where I'm at. Follow me where you want.
For sure. All right, and for one last thing, what is some advice on creating with a partner?
Let go of your ego. See what they do. It's nothing is so precious that it needs to supersede, human interaction, right? These are characters. They're created sometimes by one person, sometimes by many. Some of the greatest, media that we've ever seen is created by, committee thinking. So give into it. I think comics of all writing, maybe novel writers are the same. I don't know. Again, we tend to be isolative of our own choice, and I think it's good for everybody to stretch out there and see what they can do with someone else.
Absolutely. Plus, if you know, get any stuck in any kind of like writer's block or stuck in a rut or anything like that, it's always good
Absolutely.
to maybe change things up because maybe bringing in a fresh pair of eyes will help, or even, another opinion will help spark some ideas, and you'll get that weird little nugget you just can't let go of.
Yep.
All right, guys. So I'd like to thank Polygon Horizon. The song Pizza Force is the song we use for the show. It's a great song. They're a great band. Go check them out on Bandcamp. Fueled by Weirds on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And you can shoot me an email at fueledbyweird@gmail.com. Find the show on YouTube, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. And Fueled by Weird, along with the Nerdy Man Room show with Hassel and Monster, Hassel's Review, and Big Rob's House of Entertainment, and No Chinese Food make up the Stay Weird Network. We're a brand new podcast network dedicated to bringing some awesome back to the internet. Check us out at Stay Weird Network on YouTube and Instagram. Shoot us an email at stayweirdnetwork@gmail.com. Most importantly, last but not least, I'd like to thank the Zone Collectibles in Tifton, Georgia. They're your one-stop shop for comics, collectibles, and so much more, and they're the sponsors of the show. Now, if you like the show, please leave a review and tell your friends because word of mouth is my friend. And remember, kids, life's too short to be normal, so stay weird. John, thanks so much for hanging out with me, man.